Welcome to the Food Allergy Lifestyle Summit, where we are talking all things how to eat well, how to navigate the food allergies when you're in grocery stores, when you're traveling, and when you're feeding the family. I am so excited to have Alison with us today, and she is a nutritional therapy practitioner, an avid home chef, and a mindset coach. She helps busy women get in tune with their bodies and feel more confident in the kitchen, which don't we all want to feel that way? So Alison, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. This is such an important and needed topic.
Yeah, I'm really excited for all the things we're going to talk about today because a lot of what you do, your message, how you help people is exactly the same things that I'm trying to help my audience with as well. So I know the people watching today are going to learn a lot.
Wonderful.
So in this field of wellness and cooking and nutrition, most of us have our own personal health story, like what brought us here. So tell us about your health journey.
Yeah. So I started on this, I would say I was in my late 20s, so it was a while ago. And I was working really hard in New York City. I had a corporate job at the time. And I was working insane hours. I was just climbing the corporate ladder and doing all the things. And I thought I was eating healthy because I would have a salad for lunch here and there or, whatever. But I was ordering takeout a lot. I was too busy to cook. I had a tiny New York City apartment. And all of a sudden, I really started noticing just a lot of symptoms piling on. My digestion was not good. My hair started falling out. It was also around the time when I was newly engaged. I was planning my wedding. So there was just extra stress around that. And I was getting off the birth control pill. And that was a big trigger. So when I finally got off the birth control pill, everything changed. I felt like my body was betraying me, or that I was in this different body all of a sudden. It was just so surreal, where everything just compounded. And so at that time, I was like, okay, well, I really do believe in nutrition, and I think that there's something to the food and what I'm eating. So I really started there, and I started up my food blog, Food by Mars, and it started as sort of gluten-free, plant-based, because that's what I was hearing was, something to try and start. And it was really an exploration of me in the kitchen, tinkering with different recipes that I was creating. And before I knew it, it just kind of escalated. The symptoms were getting worse, and then my health was kind of on the decline, and I was digging more into this journey and getting educated and becoming my own advocate with doctors and with my own nutrition and different practitioners. And so I went back to school. I became a health coach, and then I became a nutritional therapy practitioner through the NTA, just like you. And, it was years in the making, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, because I became more in tune with my own body. I finally found my diagnosis with a naturopath. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's autoimmune disease, and I had so many hormonal issues like PCOS and things that I knew were kind of at play as well. So getting that direction and clarity, and then empowering myself to learn, advocate for myself, and then really take care of my cooking at home, which really got me extremely far in managing my symptoms, healing, reversing things, finally getting myself into remission, and then supporting my own fertility. I had a baby. I have a 9-month-old, which when I got my diagnosis with the PCOS and the Hashimoto's, I was like, oh no, that this just really escalated. I want to have a baby, and I don't know that I can now. So it became very, very serious. And so using food as medicine just opened everything up and changed everything. So that's kind of the journey. And now I'm so blessed and happy to be doing this as a profession and helping other women with similar issues going through their same journey, help them really excel and be successful with all this stuff, because there's major lifestyle changes and shifts that have to happen, and we got to get used to it. So that's what I'm here for.
And how old is the baby right now?
She's about to be 9 months.
And I'll say, you look really amazing. You look healthy, you look vibrant. And so with all of these challenges in your past, it seems like going through pregnancy and everything, like you really managed to keep your health together.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I definitely did, because going through something like this, there's so much learning that comes with it that starts to become autopilot. Like you start to pick up these habits and different mindset shifts, and having these recipes to go to in your back pocket, that it becomes so much more doable and easy. So had I not gone through all that healing and learning and transforming, you're right. Like, I think it would have been extremely difficult. So the pregnancy went very well. You know, there was definitely adjusting the thyroid meds and, you know, keeping a close eye, but I had the tools and the confidence to do it and to trust in my body to do this and nourish my baby and do what it had to do. And so it became working with my body to get that done. And I'm not going to lie, postpartum is hard. I'm not sleeping very well. I'm trying to stay nourished because I'm also nursing, and it can feel really depleting. I'm hungry all the time, much more than in pregnancy, which is so funny. But I have the tools and the knowledge to support myself. So that's really, just like you, what I'm really big on helping others do too.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. And all of those tools clearly are working for you. And it's not always an easy path. New challenges come up, right? Like pregnancy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what does your diet look like right now with everything that you figured out and your diagnosis and what feels good? Like, so what is your eating style like?
Yeah, so definitely nutrient dense, properly prepared food. So whole foods. I cook everything at home. I really, not even just because I'm a new mom, but I rarely eat out. And when I do, I know what to do and look for, and we'll chat about that later. But in general, I would say it looks paleo-ish, and even with a lot of AIP stuff as well. So AIP is the autoimmune protocol, and that's where you're kind of removing some additional triggers or inflammatory foods, such as certain nightshades, nuts, seeds, different things like that. I'm not like strict on it. That's more temporary, and then you bring introductions back into it to see what you do well with. But between my own health, like managing and trying to stay, in remission with Hashimoto's, it's been very, very helpful as a tool. And then also the nursing part of it. Interestingly enough, the baby started reacting to certain things like eggs and nuts. And so I'm off those two now, even though I was doing okay with them after I did my initial healing, the baby was not. So even just knowing those cues in my own body and hers right away, and then to be able to know how to exclude, reintroduce, check in with myself has been very, very powerful. So yeah, I would say it's like a modified AIP paleo type of diet at this point.
Okay. And you just mentioned about noticing symptoms, being in tune with your body. I know that's a big piece of your message and what you help people with, about like listening and being in tune with their body. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, how would you know things are off with you or the baby?
Yeah. So a big part of it, and a big part of my journey, especially with healing diets, because it can be easy to obsess over, oh, something went wrong, it's got to be this food. And I even got into that a little bit, because especially like being nutrition professionals, food is our tool. So right away we're thinking like, what did the food do? It's not all that. Sometimes it's mindset, it's stress, it's self-care. Like, are we employing all of that? So that's where a lot of the mindset stuff comes in. And mindful eating is a very powerful practice. So things like just keeping a quick journal, keeping a quick tab, like, when I do that, this happens over a few days, is a really great tool. And something that I did when I started noticing my own symptoms and or the baby's stuff. So that's been helpful. And then also just knowing like, okay, let's remove all the common triggers, the common allergies. And then after a few weeks, little by little, let's start to reintroduce and see if that thing, the symptom, whatever it is, happens again. And we know that that's what it is. So no matter what, eliminations like that, it's free to do. You can do it at any time at home. And it's a great way to figure out that communication with your body, that in tune factor. So that's a really helpful way. And then I would say, another thing that's always available to you is if you do need to do food sensitivity testing, maybe it's just too much for you to make sense of, or too many symptoms to unravel, that can be a really helpful tool as well. So between those two things, that's the best way I've found to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people don't pay attention to little symptoms. Like they get a headache and they grab the Tylenol, or they feel a little itchy and they grab a cream, and like they don't always think about, what did I just have for breakfast this morning? I definitely know that for myself, that I can tell within a few hours of like, okay, like that, maybe that breakfast didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And which is great when you have an obvious symptom. Some of our symptoms are the next day, or they're cumulative.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden you're in a bad mood and you can't figure out, why am I grumpy today? Okay, well,
Absolutely.
what have I been eating for the last 3 days?
Absolutely. And to your point about it being cumulative too, I always say the poison is in the dose. Sometimes it can be, hey, when I have coconut once or twice a week, it's fine. But when I have it in all my products, in my coffee, in my breakfast and lunch and dinner, now it's a problem. And I'm actually going through that right now. That's why I kind of singled out coconut, because I started noticing I was getting hives. That was my symptom. I was getting hives around my mouth. And I'm like, what? And at first I was like, is it coffee? Because it was happening right after my coffee. And I'm like, wait, it's the coconut milk, because I'm putting that in the coffee. And then it was going away, but then it kind of returned. And I'm like, what is it? And I was like, oh no, there's coconut in my toothpaste, in my deodorant, in my lip balm. And so it kept happening. So now I'm like removing all that. It was kind of like a duh factor. Like, why didn't I think of that? So it can be so many things.
Wow. Yeah. And so having that habit of really paying attention really helps you. It is
Absolutely.
interesting. Like if you're eliminating a food group like dairy, like I know for myself, dairy doesn't work. So you're
Yeah.
right. I use a lot of coconut. So I probably wouldn't even notice right away. Like coconut is in everything that I use instead of dairy. People who
Totally.
go off gluten end up eating a lot of rice.
Absolutely.
So like just the having variety and switching up their foods and rotating things is so important.
So important. And even with the AIP diet, like you'll start to really heavily go onto the coconut or cassava or plantains. And it's like, if you get too comfortable, anything you're leaning on too much, if leaky gut is an issue, you're really like jeopardizing your relationship with that food. So yeah, 100%. Keeping it fresh, keep rotating. Don't get too stagnant and stuck on things for so many reasons besides just the food sensitivities. Also just it's joy. There's so many amazing in-season things, you want to keep switching things out. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, right there. That's a really good one for anyone who's taking notes right now, like right there, like having variety and rotating things
So
is really a great tool. So let's talk about cooking. That's a big piece for your blog and your Instagram, like all of the really great recipes and the cooking tips that you're putting out there. What about the tool of cooking for yourself has really been so valuable to you?
Yeah, I think there's so many ways. When I talk about mindful eating, I include cooking in that, because I think that connecting to your food, having a relationship with it before you even eat is so important. So touching the food, you're preparing it, you're cooking it, you can be more grateful for it. It's so key in everything, besides the fact of, hey, you know what's in it, the ingredients because you prepared it. That's a very important part. But also just in connecting with the food, I think it's been huge. Plus it brings more joy, especially for me. Even you don't have to be Julia Child or Martha Stewart, you don't have to be this incredible like chef doing all the things. It can be quick 30-minute or less types of meals. But it can bring more joy because you're creating something, your hands are on it, and you and maybe your family or whoever you're cooking for gets to enjoy, the fruits of your labor, so to speak, as well. So for me, it's been instrumental in also just feeling more confident, in the kitchen, and not needing to lean on like, I've got to buy, all these things that are prepped already, or I have to find a menu to a takeout place, close by. Those things are like in the minority, like it's just like for when you're having a treat or when, date night or you're traveling or something like that. And it's very useful to know how to do that. But the majority of the time, it's helpful to be really confident and skilled enough in the kitchen to get good food on the table consistently.
So I know when you started, cooking this way, you probably didn't have a lot of experience with AIP or gluten-free or all of that. Like, and there's a lot of people out there that are just finding out what I shouldn't eat gluten, or I shouldn't eat dairy, or I shouldn't eat soy. And they're confused about what to do in the kitchen, or they're scared, or like, what would you tell them?
Yeah. I would say not getting overwhelmed is key right off the bat, because the stress that comes with that is often worse than the food that we would be eating. And then secondly, I would say try not to, so especially with gluten, right? It's very common for us to be like, okay, I'll just find all the gluten-free versions of the bread, the this, the that, the chips, the whatever it is, the crackers. And those things will still have ingredients that might be bothering you or are processed, or that you just still don't want to have an excess. So I would say look for whole food swaps first, because there's so many awesome resources now. And I have a post on my blog as well. It's called like the best grain alternatives. So it's all like gluten and grain alternatives. So things like sweet potatoes cut, thinly as bread, or lettuce cups as, your bread, or, something like that, because it's way more nutrient dense and you're getting added benefits with that. It's easier oftentimes, like it's just much easier. So you're kind of killing multiple, birds with one stone in that scenario. So I would say, like, don't get overwhelmed, have fun with it. Something that I also always say with these diets that I do, and anytime I've embarked on it new, as a novice to this stuff, if you're familiar with the show Chopped on Food Network, that, they kind of give you a basket of random things and you're supposed to cook with it. And you're like, what do I do with this? I kind of took it on as like a Chopped challenge. Like, okay, I can't have this and I can't have that. What can I have? So focus on what you can have, what is in your basket, and what you can do with it, and how you can be creative with it, or, make fun, easy swaps. So I would say just like not getting overwhelmed, keeping it on the positive. What can I have and what can I do with that?
I like that. What I'm hearing a lot of is have fun. It's don't stress about it.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to get fed.
Yes.
And it just might be a little different than what you've done before.
Exactly.
And there's so many great resources out there, just like your blog and your great recipes that you put out there. I, as a chef, really appreciate well-written recipes. And it's really frustrating when I've sent people out like, okay, go find a recipe for this swap or this. And then you find like things aren't written well. And so then they're frustrated in the kitchen, like things didn't work out the way it should have. And is it them? So they give up. So I really appreciate when there's really great quality recipes out there that like show you all the tips, that have great pictures so people can feel more confident jumping in and doing this for themselves.
Absolutely. And when it's coming from people that are living this, and this is their normal weeknight routine or whatever it is, I think it's also really helpful because it's tried and true. And especially with food bloggers like myself, like I'm always reading the comments, and I'll get DMs of like, hey, what would you swap for this and all that stuff. So it's also helpful because a lot of times we're like ready to go and have ideas, or maybe we don't know. So, we're having a feedback loop with you. So yeah, it's really about setting yourself up for success while you're trying something new.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Because one of my biggest recommendations for people is go out and find someone that has a story behind why they're cooking this way. Yeah. They are the people that really care about the information they're putting out. People like you have a story, you have a reason why you're cooking this way. It's for your health. And so you care more that other people are healing themselves too. So that's a really great thing to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about traveling? What do you do when you travel? Now, especially you've got a little one with you, and that's going to create some new challenges of its own as well. So for your health and keeping yourself feeling good, what do you do when you're not at home?
Yeah. So the first thing that I'll always say, and this is included in the downloads because there's so much that I'm always arming my clients with, especially that pop up. But so with travel specifically, if we want to talk about that, some little tips and tricks are like, if you can find an Airbnb with a kitchen or a hotel with a kitchen, that's ideal because you can map out like where's the closest groceries, or what can you bring? If you're driving, it might be easier, but also there's plenty of stuff you can find to bring on the plane. And having that as a backup, or to know that like, hey, most of my meals, like maybe the breakfast or the lunches, like the quick things that I'm not looking to eat out at a nice restaurant for, you can at least have at your room. So right away, that takes out a lot of guesswork. It also helps you save money. Like I did that probably a year ago now. We went to the Caribbean and we got like an Airbnb, like a villa instead, because I was like, I know I'm not gonna be able to eat a lot of things. Like there's a lot of spices, there's a lot, just things that I know I'm not gonna be able to eat. So it was really important for me to make sure I had a kitchen. We saved so much more money that way. Like we didn't have to, do breakfast, lunch, and dinner and, out all the time. We just, went to the nearest grocery shop, got some eggs, got some bacon, got some greens. And that was like an easy breakfast most mornings. So, it's a twofer. You save some money and you get, some good food and confidence in like, okay, at least I know most of my meals, nothing's going to make me sick because I'm preparing it. And then that just enriches your travel experience, because I think we all know from experience, it's terrible when you're away, you want to have fun and something just really bothered your stomach. You ate something, you got glutened or just whatever the scenario is. And unfortunately, it is what it is. Along that same vein, let's say something does happen like that. We're more susceptible to it when we travel. It might just happen. Having some supplements like digestive enzymes, like activated charcoal, and just some other things that I have listed out in the PDF that you guys will get, really helpful to have as your emergency kit or your toolkit, so to speak, because it might happen. Just prepare for it and bounce back from it so you could still enjoy your vacation or your trip or whatever it is. So that's really huge. And then ultimately, with both dining out and travel, customer is king. You're paying for the meal. You deserve to request what you want. And I find oftentimes we're just not that confident to ask for what we want. We don't want to be that person in the party that's like, can I ask you what's in that? Or, hey, I have allergies. But you know what? You deserve to have fun. Like, what's worse? Like you just pulling the waiter aside for 5 minutes versus you getting sick and then not being able to do all the things you wanted to do. So I think that no matter what, anytime you are eating outside of your control, you should be informed and you should be confident enough to request what you want. So looking at the menu and seeing that maybe they don't have a perfect dish for you, but there's elements from other dishes that you see like, well, they have a salad, so they have greens. They have a grilled chicken breast. I'm just going to ask for them to make a grilled chicken salad and let's go from there. So I do that often where I'll like make my own meal and I say like, I have allergies. This is what I need to eat or whatever. And they will 99% of the time accommodate you and you'll find some kind of way to work it out with them. And I'll always say like, if I have to pay extra, I'll pay extra. Like it is what it is. So I think that alleviates a lot of the stress of spending 20 minutes looking at a menu and feeling stuck because maybe there's half a thing you can eat. Like there's just no point in that. Just go in guns blazing, ask for what you want and warn them that you have allergies.
Yeah. Why do we do that? Why are we afraid to inconvenience them by asking questions?
Yes. When we're paying for the meal and, also they don't want, bad karma and a situation to happen where you're having an allergic reaction, you're going to leave a bad review, whatever it is. So they don't want that liability and they do need to comply with your, allergy restrictions. So just keep that in mind. And if they're giving you a hard time or something like that, like, okay, maybe you can go to the next place, like why should you have to suffer? It's just not fair. Another thing that I would say to your point of like, why we're not confident enough to kind of say these things or whatever. Sometimes it is the social aspect, like maybe whoever we're out with is teasing us or asking us a lot of questions like, why can't you have gluten? Should I be gluten-free? And it just kind of like opens up this can of worms and you just don't want to talk about it. You just want to order, your meal. So I would say something that I definitely do is I go prepared. Like I'll have a list of, I will have Googled already, maybe gone on Foursquare or Yelp or just something. Where are the gluten-free, dairy-free spots that I know at least I can get that? And I'll have a list and look at the best reviews and know where I can eat. And my husband is so used to it and is such a big advocate. Like anytime we go out, he'll be like, that's not cheese, right? Or he's very, into it with me, which is good. But sometimes we don't always have, that support, or we're dining out with friends and we need to do that homework, and it gives us more confidence, and we'll know ahead of time what's on the menu. And you can also call ahead and ask, what oils do you use? Is this a gluten-free kitchen, or just whatever it is. And you can even let them know, like, hey, that reservation at 7 p.m. tonight, that's me. FYI, I'm going to be ordering this. So then you don't even really need to pull them aside that much. You just remind them, like, we spoke earlier, this is the plate that I need to order. So there's so many ways to go about just being prepared, covering yourself, minimal stress, minimal drama, and you can importantly enjoy your meal and not get sick.
Yeah. And we have the power of the internet. Like you just said, look ahead of time. There's so many reviews. There's everything's on the internet. One is looking for a gluten-free or paleo, or something raw, vegan restaurant is one. Yeah. And then go and see what people have written about it. If someone you're not the first person with a gluten allergy to walk into that restaurant, most likely, right? Totally. So like if someone's written a recipe, like a review that said, oh, this was great, I got great service, or they don't really know what they're talking about.
Absolutely.
Before you walk in.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I'm sure you can relate too, but just years ago, even just a few years ago, it wasn't this widespread and people weren't this knowledgeable on it. And it can still be much better. And it also depends if you're traveling or you're in a state or an area that's just, they're not with it on this kind of stuff. It's definitely still a challenge for sure. But to your point, we have the internet, we have reviews, we have people that like us are going through this and have probably been there earlier. So, no matter what, do your research and then just talk to them. Like it'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Just talk to them, ask some questions.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this has been really, really informative. We've hit a lot of really, really great points that I know are helping people.
Right.
So if there's someone out there, I know there's people out there that are listening to this, they hear themselves in your story, or they're really inspired by the information you're giving them and giving them things to think about and some tools. And especially if maybe they're kind of new to all of this, they're new to the way they're eating, they're not quite confident in the kitchen yet. Like what would be your top 2 or 3 tips for where they could start in all of this?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great question. I think ultimately bringing the positivity, the joy to it, and figuring out what you can have. Focus on the glasses half full versus glasses half empty. Like, oh my God, all my favorite foods, I can't have them anymore. I promise you, because I felt the same way, by focusing on what you can have and the positives, you actually realize you weren't eating a lot of things all the time. You were leaning, everybody is such a, creature of habit that we just lean on the same foods over and over again. So when you start to look at the other stuff, like, oh, I've never tried that vegetable, or, oh, I've not, now you're opening your world. And that's one thing I would say is a positive aspect that food sensitivities and my healing journey has brought to me, is discovering all these new things I never grew up eating. I never knew about. I never knew what it tasted like. I didn't know what to do with it or how to cook it. And through this journey, I've opened my world to more food than I've ever had before versus, operating from a state of deprivation and I can't have these things anymore. And then that just really mucks up the attitude and, can really affect our relationship with food, which we don't want to do. So that's number 1. Focus on what you can have and have fun with it. And then 2, like you said, there's so many great resources, which you are bringing to people. So this, summit is just an amazing resource in itself, but in general, feel confident to use these tools that you get from everyone and, chip away at them little by little. Don't get overwhelmed, because it's consistency over perfection. It's implementing these little things that have huge, impact on our life day to day and our health. And you'll start to feel it as you, little by little make these changes. So I think that's 2. And I think 3, advocate for yourself. So all those travel tips and everything that I gave you, I think the bottom line is you're in charge. Customer is king, and you can go in asking for what you want, and not only talk about like, I have a gluten allergy, I have a dairy allergy, I have going through the list. You can just say like, hey, I need the spinach, eggs, and bacon only in olive oil. Can you do that? Great. Like, done. And just keep it simple, and you don't owe an explanation to people. You're paying, it's your body. So you should be your own confident advocate.
Thank you for that. That's
Absolutely.
such a great message. No one else is going to help you feel good if you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Be your own advocate.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, thank you, Alison. This has been really an incredible conversation. So thank you, Alison, for being with us. Thank you for everyone here that's been watching. I know that you're learning so much, and we will talk with you again soon.
Thank you so much.